We got some Miami Dolphins news to get into on today's show, but before we do that, I want to make sure you have your notifications turned on. Now, first, you have to be subscribed, so make sure you are subscribed to the channel, but we are posting more videos each week, with sometimes videos coming 2 a day. We also have live shows every week as well. Never miss a thing around the Miami Dolphins, and be alerted when we do drop some content by having your notification turned on. So click that bell and make sure it's turned on for all, not just personalized, so you never miss a beat of Miami Dolphins news. I am Nic Rohloff. This is Miami Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. And on today's show, we have to go through a lot of Dolphins injuries news and notes just a couple days before the first preseason game, or second preseason game against the Commanders here. Plus, the Dolphins actually made a signing to their roster today, just one day after they released Teair Tart, and that's where we're actually going to start today's show. Barry Jackson had the news earlier this morning saying that former Florida State defensive tackle Robert Cooper is signing with the Dolphins per source. It's interesting that they added defensive lineman just one day after releasing Teair Tart, who also plays that same position, and that's kind of where I kind of view this a little bit, at least just off the beginning. It seems like he's filling a void left by Teair Tart on the roster, not in terms of potentially being an impact player on this Dolphins team for the NFL regular season, but just for bodies in practice and the 2 preseason games remaining for the Miami Dolphins. That's kind of how I view this, at least right now. So who is Robert Cooper? Well, let's talk about the newest Miami Dolphin here. Well, he attended Florida State, like Barry Jackson noted there. He spent 5 seasons as a Seminole, spanning from the 2018 to the 2022 season. He was a UDFA in the 2023 year, so just 1 year ago. He was not selected in the draft. The Seahawks scooped him up, and he actually participated in both the Eagles and Seahawks 2023 training camp. Seahawks ultimately let him go, and then Cooper tried out for the Eagles before just missing that 53-man roster. And obviously, he joins now the Dolphins here in the middle of training camp. And Cooper did have a pretty distinguished career as a Seminole, if we're going to be honest. He played 5 years there, and he played a lot of football. He amassed 123 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 3 PBU. He's also a very massive human being. The listed measurements on him right now is 6'2" and then 335 pounds. He is an absolute massive human being, and I believe I saw something out there today on Twitter that he got the nickname of like a stuffer or something like that, something crazy, that he just absolutely requires 1 or 2 people blocking him on the interior in the run game because he is so massive, and it just that allows the linebackers to fill the holes and play well on the defensive side, crashing into those gaps. All right, I have one more thing to talk about on Robert Cooper. Before we get to that, though, let me know, be honest with me. Did you know who Robert Cooper was coming into today's show? You might have, because if you're a Dolphins fan that live in Florida, maybe you're a Florida State fan, maybe you're a Miami Hurricane fan, but let me know if you knew who Robert Cooper was. Last word on Robert Cooper. I think the Dolphins added him just to have a body in that defensive line room with Teair Tart cut. We talked about that just a second ago. But also with Benito Jones, who has now been listed as the #1 player in the nose tackle position for the Dolphins on their most recent depth chart. And he's been dealing with an injury. He's missed a couple practices. He's listed as day-to-day, and hopefully it's nothing serious. But with him missing out on practices, I think it does make sense to bring in another body so they don't have to play as many decent starters for an extended period of time on Saturday in their second preseason game. No, they have a guy to fill that third and fourth quarter on the interior defensive line now in Cooper. All right, let's move on now with some Dolphins injury updates, because Mike McDaniel did have a press conference this morning and spoke on Odell Beckham Jr., Isaiah Wynn, as well as some other injured Miami Dolphin players. The first one that he mentioned was actually corner Jalen Ramsey, saying that the team is being very proactive in limiting Jalen Ramsey, who's been dealing with a minor injury. Ramsey has missed the last couple of practices, and this makes a lot of sense. There is no need to push Jalen Ramsey. He obviously had an injury last year that delayed his Miami Dolphins debut, and then he did have a very strong debut for the Fins where he picked off Mac Jones in New England. But either way, Ramsey is such an experienced corner who is the best at what he does. There is no need for him to be playing every single day, and even if he feels a little bit sore, I would hold out Jalen Ramsey because he is such an essential piece to this Miami Dolphins defense where there's no need to push him. I would expect we don't see him in the entire preseason. And the first time we see Jalen Ramsey on the football field this year will actually be week 1 against the Jaguars, hopefully locking down Gabe Davis and company. All right, Mike McDaniel also spoke about Isaiah Wynn, the Dolphins offensive lineman, who is projected to be the starting left guard, but doesn't really seem like that's going to be the case anymore. McDaniel said that compounding stuff that you want to make sure is fully healthy. It's lower extremity related. I'll leave it at that. So it doesn't look like Isaiah Wynn is going to be seen on the football field anytime soon, which means Robert Jones, you are the starting left guard. Now, this puts a lot of things in motion along this Dolphins offensive line because coming into training camp, before people were placed on the PUP list, the projected starting offensive line went Teron Armstead, Isaiah Wynn, Aaron Brewer, Robert Jones at right guard, and Austin Jackson at right tackle. But with now so many injuries occurring to Aaron Brewer, Wynn still on the PUP list, it now looks like Robert Jones is going to have to move over to starting left guard. He now has had a good training camp in preseason so far, so looks good right now. And then you're going to have, at least because of Aaron Brewer's injury right now as well, Liam Eichenberg starting at center with potentially Jack Driscoll being that starting right guard. So that interior offensive line is still a large concern, if you're asking me, around this Dolphins team. It really is the only concern I have. I like almost every single position on this roster outside of the interior offensive line. More injury news coming up on Odell Beckham Jr. and Javon Holland. But we are sponsored by Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports platform and app in North America that has over 5 million users playing on a daily basis. I am one of them, and you should be too. And you can just play it in such a different way, right? You can go to any sports league, combine players, and like this entry I have here, I took advantage of a promotion that PrizePicks is running, limited down to half a significant strike for Israel Adesanya. I'm taking the more there, obviously, and I'm pairing it up with Bam Adebayo, more than 9.8 rebounds a game for the Heat this year, and more than on Tua Tagovailoa, 25.5 passing touchdowns this upcoming season. I feel like those are very confident picks by me, and it's 3 entries to win 5 times my money, but you can win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct entries. They already have week 1 stat projections out as well for football, which means you can go take the more than or less than on Tyreek Hill's 9.5 yards. They're also going to be running a promotion for Caleb Williams passing yards. Gets you 1 win on Prize Picks every single week in September. Prize Picks has daily promotions, including Taco Tuesdays, Flex Friday, and they just allow you to have the most fun while watching your favorite sports league. So download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, let's move into Javon Holland now, who has missed a couple days of practice here. Mike McDaniel said Holland is day-to-day as he's working through something minor, per Mike McDaniel. Now, I will say this. A lot of these injuries that the Dolphins have are minor from Coach McDaniel. Now, hopefully that is the case, and they're just being cautious and don't want to push them because there's no need to. But remember, folks, during the preseason, you don't have to go in depth on players' injuries. It is required in the regular season, just due to the NFL rules and courtesy to the other teams, like that you kind of specify injuries. But during this portion of the season, you do not have to. So I hope that Coach McDaniel is not lying to the media and the fans about some of the severity of these injuries. But man, oh man, it is never easy, man. With all these injuries occurring last year, now getting started up this year, I'm just crossing my fingers that we can make it through a season with no massive injuries to any of the key players. Odell Beckham Jr. has remained on the PUP list and sidelined from this Dolphins team. Mike McDaniel spoke about it today. We did mention a little stuff yesterday as Tua talked about OBJ's injury, but here's what Mike McDaniel said. Said they're being cautious with OBJ, don't want to rush him back and cause a setback, but he does believe OBJ is hungry to get back on the field. McDaniel also said, funny. So I do appreciate McDaniel having some humor in this situation. Says he didn't sign up for football to be in meetings, even though my meetings are super entertaining. So hopefully Odell Beckham Jr. will be back soon for the Miami Dolphins. But it sparked this question in my mind. And I want a prediction from you guys down in the comments section. When will OBJ make his Dolphins debut? It's certainly not going to be in the preseason. And it's certainly not going to be in week 1 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Remember, when the first news was announced about OBJ being on the PUP list to start camp, I didn't think it was anything crazy. I thought he was going to be ready to go for week 1. But in the past couple of days, I've said multiple times on multiple different shows that Odell Beckham Jr. will not be in practice or in uniform for game 1 against the Jaguars, in my opinion. And I truly believe that will be the case because this is a tough offense to pick up. And with how many motions and timing, you have to have a good rapport with Tua, and that's just not going to be able to develop in time for week 1. So it's going to be interesting to see when he plays this season. Could be all the way in week 3 because it will be a tough turnaround from week 1 to week 2 for Miami, considering they are on Thursday Night Football against the Buffalo Bills in week 2. But I hope OBJ is somehow able to get on the field before then. All right, we're going to talk about today's practice now, and I will say this before we get into some practice news and notes. A lot of people did miss today's practice, not because of injury, but because of rest, due to the joint practice looming tomorrow. The Commanders are coming into town for Saturday's preseason game. They have one joint practice. That is Thursday morning. We will have updates about that practice tomorrow, so make sure you are subscribed. But it makes sense to hold a lot of veterans out due to the fact that they're all going to play hard and have physical contact tomorrow against the Commanders. Now, a couple of notes from practice that I wanted to share with all the Dolphins fans. Travis Wingfield, who's been there covering the team and does an excellent job, said Jack Driscoll reps where he was first off the snap the other night in the game. More of that today. He hit a second-level block yet created a seam for Jalen Wright and another monster run. Now, this is very positive to hear. One, Jalen Wright continuing to play well. I heard he had a 30-yard touchdown today. Did have a fumble on the play right after. Not ideal there, but you see the positive flashes from the rookie running back. But specifically on Jack Driscoll, if he's going to be the starting right guard week 1, it's kind of what I projected before training camp began, is that he was be able to take it over. But when I watched him start at center in the first preseason game for the Fins against the Falcons, I didn't think he looked that good. But when he was moved over because of Sean Harlow coming in, and Driscoll was able to play his more natural position, in my opinion, of right guard, he did play really well, and he actually had the second highest PFF grade in that preseason game. So to me, I think Driscoll can actually be an average right guard for the Miami Dolphins. So end the experiment of him being the backup center. He is a right guard, in my opinion. And I'm not here to say that I know more than Mike McDaniel and these Dolphins coaches. I don't think that in the slightest, but it does give me a little puzzling idea of why Driscoll's playing center at times and not right guard. All right, Cam Smith had a busy day. A lot of pass breakups. Heard he had a nice little breakup of a Devon Achane flat when the offense and defense were going up against each other. And he also spoke to the media after practice and told the reporters that he feels very confident in his ability. He believes that Anthony Weaver, the new DC, knows that Cam Smith is a baller and can really add to this Dolphins defense. And I like the talk. I like the confidence from the second-round pick of South Carolina from a year ago. But he needs to show it on the football field. He needs to stay healthy, considering the fact that he really has not played any football over the past year and a half because he was in the doghouse of Vic Fangio. All right, before we get out of here, some other standouts for the Miami Dolphins. Emmanuel Ogbah, Chop Robinson, Isaiah Johnson, and Marcus May all had good days. Ogbah and Robinson might be your top 2 edge rushers week 1. I do think Jalen Phillips will be ready to go and be active, but it still remains to be seen if he's going to have a full plate of work after trying to recover from the torn Achilles, but he is off the PUP list, which is good news. The rookie has just been so good, flashing his athleticism, speed, bendy ability as well. And Ogbah, who has been a revelation ever since being signed one day before training camp after the Shaq Barrett retirement. I thought Barrett was going to be really good in this Dolphins defense, but with how Emmanuel Ogbah has played so far in training camp under this new style defense of Anthony Weaver and no longer under Vic Fangio, I'm kind of bullish on Emmanuel Ogbah's ability to have like a 5.5 to 7.5 sack season this year. I think he's going to be really good. The UDFA Isaiah Johnson performed really well. A couple pass breakups and red zone work out of Syracuse. Got a long uphill climb to make this roster, but maybe he's able to work his way onto the Dolphins practice squad. And Marcus May fighting for depth position on the safety depth chart as well with Mark Perry, with Patrick McMorris, with Elijah Campbell, he had a really strong day in pass coverage as well, so it's good to see someone who is projected to be the third safety on this team perform pretty well. All right, that's going to do it for today's show. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel and make sure those notifications are turned on as well. We had 2 videos come out today. Sometimes we do that here, folks, at the channel. We're going to have another video tomorrow breaking down the joint practices or between the Commanders and the Dolphins, and we'll be live on Saturday for that preseason game as well. So hit that sub button and join us. As always, go Fins.